Some moments seem ordinary at first, until they change everything. For Sarah Carter, it was just another long, quiet shift at McDonald's. Another night of wiping counters, refilling napkin dispensers, and waiting for the clock to drag itself towards sunrise. She had done this hundreds of times before, but on this particular night, something felt different. Maybe it was the heavy silence that wrapped around the empty restaurant. Maybe it was the way the neon lights flickered unevenly, casting strange shadows on the tiled floor. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the moment the door swung open, and he walked in. The low, steady rumble of a motorcycle had been the first sign. Then came the glow of headlights cutting through the misty street. A man, dressed in a dark jacket and a baseball cap, stepped inside. He moved with the kind of quiet confidence that made Sarah instinctively straighten her posture behind the counter. She had served thousands of customers over the years. Some were polite, others impatient. A few were even memorable. But there was something about this man. Something that made her pause. "Good evening," she said, forcing her tired voice to sound professional. "What can I get for you?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "A coffee. And some fries." Simple order. Nothing unusual. Sarah nodded, punching the items into the register. "That'll be." But before she could finish, he started checking his pockets. A slight frown creased his face as he patted his jacket, then his jeans. His shoulders tensed. "I forgot my wallet." His voice was calm, but there was an edge of frustration beneath it. He let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "Guess I'll have to head back and grab it." He turned toward the door. Without thinking, Sarah reached for her card and swiped it through the machine. "It's already paid for," she said, her voice steady. The man froze. He looked at her, confusion flashing in his tired eyes. "But why?" She shrugged. "Because you look like you've had a long day. And sometimes, people just need a little kindness." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a small, knowing smile curved his lips. Sarah had no idea that one small gesture would turn her life upside down. She had no idea who she had just helped. Sarah's phone vibrated on the counter. A message from the manager. "Come to my office. Now." Her stomach twisted. Something was wrong. She glanced at Marcos, her coworker, who gave her a knowing look. "This is about the video, isn't it?" she asked, already bracing herself. He shrugged. "Probably." With a deep breath, she wiped her hands on her apron and pushed open the office door. The air inside felt heavier than usual. Mr. Dawson, the store manager, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He didn't greet her. He just tapped his phone screen and turned it toward her. The video. It was playing on repeat. Her paying for the stranger's meal. His look of surprise. That small, grateful smile. She shifted on her feet. "Look, You broke company policy, Sarah." His tone was flat, his expression unreadable. She frowned. "I used my money. I didn't give away free food." "That doesn't matter," he snapped. "If we let this slide, what's next? Employees handing out meals whenever they feel like it? What if next time it's not Keanu Reeves, but some random customer? The rules exist for a reason." Sarah's fists clenched. "So, kindness is against the rules now?" Dawson exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "It's not about kindness. It's about consistency. And unfortunately..." Her breath hitched. "You're terminated. Effective immediately." Silence. The words felt unreal. She blinked, waiting for him to take them back. He didn't. Instead, he slid a brown envelope across the desk. "This is your final paycheck and severance details." She stared at it, hands trembling. Fired. Just like that. Swallowing hard, she grabbed the envelope and turned to leave. Before stepping out, she looked over her shoulder. "I did the right thing." Dawson didn't reply. She walked out, head high, but inside, everything was collapsing. Outside the office, the restaurant felt different. Co-workers whispered. A few looked at her with pity. Others avoided eye contact. Marcos stood near the counter, eyes wide. They actually fired you? She gave a small nod. Before she could process it, someone outside the glass doors pointed their phone at her. Another person whispered, "That's her." More cameras. More people watching. Then, the questions started. Did they really fire you? What happened in there? Sarah's instinct was to keep walking, ignore them. But then, she stopped. For so long, she had stayed silent. Not today. She turned, looking straight into one of the phones. "Yes," she said, voice steady. "I got fired. Because I paid for a man's meal with my own money." A hush fell over the small crowd. Then, someone muttered, "That's insane." Anger spread like wildfire. The internet exploded. #Justice for Sarah trended within hours. How do you fire someone for being kind? Never eating at McDonald's again. They need to fix this now. Sarah's social media flooded. Messages poured in. Some were from strangers offering support. Others were reporters asking for interviews. By evening, news channels picked up the story. McDonald's worker fired after act of kindness. Public demands answers. Sarah sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the screen. The world was on her side. But that didn't change the fact that she had no job. She sighed, pressing her palms into her eyes. Bills were still due. Rent wasn't going to pay itself. Then, her phone buzzed again. A new email. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the sender. Keanu Reeves. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, scrolling through job listings for the 100th time. Each one blurred into the next. Cashier, customer service, stockroom assistant, but none of them mattered. She already knew how these conversations would go. She had spent the entire morning walking from store to store, resume in hand, hoping for a chance. Every manager gave her the same look, the one that said, "Oh, you're that girl from the video." Some were polite, others not so much. "We're not hiring at the moment. We'll give you a call if something opens up. We don't want any distractions right now." She left each place feeling worse than before. By the time she got home, her feet ached and her head pounded. Bills sat on the kitchen table, unopened. The rent deadline circled in red on the calendar loomed over her like a storm cloud. She dropped onto the couch and exhaled, staring at the ceiling. The viral fame that had people calling her a hero wasn't paying her rent. It wasn't putting food on the table. It wasn't helping at all. Her younger brother, Leo, sat across from her, watching with concern. "You'll find something," he said, trying to sound hopeful. Sarah forced a small smile. "Yeah." But they both knew the truth. The clock was ticking, and she was out of options. That night, she sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, staring at a blank email draft. "Maybe I can do remote work." She typed in data entry jobs and hit search. Hundreds of listings appeared, but all required experience she didn't have. She clicked on one. Requires 2 years of administrative experience. Another. Must have prior remote customer service training. Her chest tightened. She shut the laptop and rubbed her temples. Hours passed. The apartment was silent except for the ticking clock. Leo had gone to bed, but Sarah sat awake, the weight of everything pressing down on her. She reached for her phone, ready to mindlessly scroll through social media to escape reality for a few minutes. A notification popped up. An email. She frowned. At this hour? Her tired eyes scanned the sender's name. K. Reeves. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Then, slowly, she opened it. "Sarah, I saw what happened. I want to help. Let's talk." Her heart pounded. Was this real? She read it again. And again. This wasn't just some random message. It wasn't a joke. She stared at the screen, her pulse racing. For the first time in days, she felt something other than exhaustion. Hope. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the email. Her fingers trembled as she read the message over and over again. "Sarah, I saw what happened. I want to help. Let's talk. This had to be a joke. She clicked on the sender's name, K. Reeves. Could it really be him? Her mind raced. Why would Keanu Reeves, one of the biggest actors in the world, be reaching out to her? Was this some elaborate scam? She hesitated for a long moment before finally typing a reply. Is this really you? Within minutes, another email came through. Meet me tomorrow at the Sunset Cafe. 10 a.m. Her heart pounded. This wasn't fake. It was real. The next morning, Sarah walked into the cafe, her palms sweaty. The place was quiet, the smell of fresh coffee lingering in the air. Then, she saw him. Sitting at a small table by the window, Keanu Reeves looked exactly like he did in movies. Effortlessly cool, dressed in a black jacket, sipping a coffee. For a second, she thought about turning around and walking out. This was too surreal. But then he looked up and met her eyes. A slow, familiar smile spread across his face. Sarah, he said, standing up. She swallowed hard and approached, sliding into the seat across from him. I don't understand, she admitted. Keanu chuckled, setting his cup down. I bet. It's not every day something like this happens. She folded her hands on the table, trying to keep herself from fidgeting. Why are you here? He leaned back, studying her for a moment before speaking. Because what you did meant something to me. And because I think I know you. Sarah blinked. What? He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Your mother, she used to work at a movie theater, didn't she? A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Her pulse quickened. How do you know that? Keanu smiled softly. Because when I was just a struggling actor, trying to find my way, your mom helped me. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. He continued, his voice filled with nostalgia. I was broke back then. I had nothing, but I loved movies. I used to sneak into theaters just to watch films, to learn. Your mom caught me one night. Sarah leaned forward, heart pounding. Did she kick you out? Keanu chuckled. No. She walked up to me, handed me a ticket, and said, everyone deserves to escape into a good story sometimes. Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes. That sounded exactly like her mother. She let me in more than once, Keanu said, his expression warm. Sometimes, she even gave me popcorn when no one was looking. Sarah covered her mouth with her hands. I had no idea. Keanu nodded. She probably never mentioned it. But I never forgot. He leaned forward. That small kindness? It stayed with me. It meant everything at a time when I had nothing. Sarah wiped at her eyes, overwhelmed. So, when I saw you that night, Keanu continued, when I saw you do the exact same thing, without expecting anything in return, I knew I had to do something. Sarah shook her head. It was just a meal. He smiled. To you, maybe. But to me, it was more than that. She let out a shaky breath. I still don't understand. Why me? Why reach out? Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the table between them. Because your mother helped me when she didn't have to. And now, all these years later, you did the same. Sarah hesitated before picking up the envelope. Inside was a check. A very large check. Her breath caught. I can't accept this. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because it's too much. He smiled knowingly. Your mom didn't think twice about helping me. And now, I don't want you to think twice about this. Sarah stared at the check, her hands shaking. This money could change everything. Leo wouldn't have to worry. The rent, the bills, all of it. She looked up at Keanu, still in disbelief. I don't know what to say. He smiled again. Then don't say anything. Just use it well. Sarah exhaled slowly. Her life had just changed in a way she never imagined. And it all started with one small act of kindness. Sarah stared at the check in her hands. The numbers blurred as her mind tried to process what was happening. This wasn't a small sum. This wasn't just help. This was life-changing. Her grip tightened on the paper, her heart racing. She shook her head slowly. I can't take this. Keanu leaned back in his chair, his expression calm but firm. Why not? She swallowed hard. Because it's too much. Because I don't deserve this. He studied her for a moment before speaking. Sarah, do you think your mom hesitated when she helped me? She looked away, struggling to find the right words. Keanu continued, his voice gentle but unwavering. She didn't have to let me into that theater. She didn't have to offer kindness to a struggling actor who had nothing to give in return. But she did. Sarah exhaled shakily, her fingers tracing the edges of the check. He leaned forward. And you? You did the same thing. You helped without expecting anything. You didn't care who I was. You just saw someone who needed a little kindness. She bit her lip, emotions swelling in her chest. It was just a meal. He smiled. To you, maybe. But to me, it was more than that. She looked at him, searching his face for any sign that he was doing this out of pity. But there was none. Only sincerity. Keanu nodded toward the check. This isn't charity, Sarah. This is me passing on the kindness your mom gave me. And it's me making sure you and your brother don't have to struggle like she did. Her throat tightened. He wasn't just giving her money. He was giving her a chance. She took a deep breath. If I accept this, I have to make it count. His smile widened. That's the idea. That evening, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, the check resting between her and Leo. He stared at it, eyes wide. This is real. She nodded. His voice dropped to a whisper. Sarah, this could fix everything. She met his gaze. Then let's do it right. Leo sat up straighter. Okay, first thing. She exhaled. Rent. No more overdue notices, no more eviction threats. That gets paid first. He grinned. Agreed. She tapped the check. After that, no more debt. No more credit card bills piling up. Leo leaned forward, excitement sparking in his eyes. And then, she hesitated. For so long, her life had been about surviving, just getting through each day, making sure they had enough to scrape by. But now, she had a choice. Sarah swallowed. I want to go back to school. Leo's mouth fell open. Seriously? She nodded, a little unsure but also excited. I never had the chance. I had to work. But now, maybe I can actually study. Maybe I can do something more. Leo's grin grew. You'd be amazing at it. She smiled, a flicker of hope blooming inside her. You think so? I know so. She nudged the check toward him. And you? What do you want? His face lit up with an energy she hadn't seen in years. I want to apply for film school. Sarah blinked. Film school? He nodded eagerly. I've been editing videos on my phone for years. I love storytelling. And now, maybe I can actually learn how to do it for real. She felt a lump rise in her throat. He had always put his dreams on hold because of their situation. Not anymore. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Then that's what we're going to do. Leo let out a breathless laugh, shaking his head. I still can't believe this is happening. Me neither, she admitted. But as she looked at her brother, his face glowing with hope, their future no longer clouded with uncertainty, she knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. 6 months had passed. The cramped apartment with flickering lights and peeling wallpaper was no longer home. The boxes were unpacked, and a new space, a brighter, quieter one, had taken its place. Sarah sat at a wooden desk, flipping through pages of her business textbook. The sound of keys clicking filled the air. Across the room, Leo sat at his own desk, editing footage for a short film. His focus was intense, his expression one of pure determination. It still felt unreal sometimes. No more late-night shifts at a job that drained her. No more overdue bills weighing on her mind. For the first time in years, they weren't just surviving. They were moving forward. She had enrolled in business school a few months ago, something she had never thought possible. The classes were tough, but she loved every second of it. Every lecture, every assignment. It was a reminder that she was finally building something for herself. Leo had wasted no time applying to film school. He got accepted into a program that felt like a dream. He had spent his entire life studying movies, learning storytelling on his own. Now, he was actually learning from professionals. "Sarah," Leo called out, pulling off his headphones. "I think this is my best edit yet." She turned, watching as he played back a scene on his screen. The lighting, the pacing, the way it all came together, it looked incredible. "You're getting better every day," she said with a proud smile. Leo leaned back in his chair, stretching. "Feels like everything finally makes sense. You know?" She nodded. "Yeah, it really does." Her phone buzzed. A notification popped up. New message from Keanu Reeves. She clicked it open. "How's the new chapter treating you?" A warmth spread through her chest. She typed back, "Better than I ever imagined. Thank you." She hit send and placed the phone down, looking at her brother, their apartment, the life they were finally building. None of this would have happened without that one small act of kindness. A simple meal for a stranger had changed everything. And as she looked toward the future, she knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. Sarah closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, letting out a deep breath. Life had changed in ways she never expected. One small decision, a simple act of kindness, had started a ripple effect she could have never imagined. She had lost a job but gained a future. She had faced rejection but found opportunity. Most importantly, she had learned that kindness, no matter how small, had the power to shape destinies. Her journey wasn't about luck. It was about doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. And somehow, the universe had found a way to bring that kindness back to her. Across the room, Leo was still glued to his computer screen, making final edits to his latest project. She watched him for a moment, feeling nothing but pride. They had struggled, they had fought through uncertainty, but now, they were on a path they never thought possible. And it all started with one meal for a stranger. Sarah picked up her phone, scrolling through the messages of people who had followed her journey. Some shared their own experiences of kindness. Others said the story had inspired them to do something good for someone else. She smiled. That was the real takeaway. Kindness spreads. It doesn't take much to make a difference. One gesture, one moment, one decision, it can change everything. Sarah knew her story wasn't unique. Every day, small acts of kindness were happening all around the world, unseen, unrecognized. But that didn't make them any less powerful. So, to anyone listening, she had one thing to say. Be the person who makes a difference. You never know whose life you might change, including your own. And with that, she put her phone away, ready to take on whatever came next. If you enjoyed this story, there's more where that came from. Click to hear another incredible journey of hope, kindness, and unexpected twists.